men need from their fathers, and it's these three things that we've talked about. This transcendent cause, right? In other words, something that goes beyond yourself, right? Because you're going to be investing your life for the rest of your life, right? Like you're going to be investing your time, your talent, your energy, and if you don't, hey Rachel, you can't be in here. That's like a code violation. Oh, well, you should have left him with your book, and we would have seen how that worked out for him. So, anyway, just this idea that, if you don't have something in your life that goes beyond yourself, it real quickly becomes an all about me world, right? How much money can I make? How high can I climb up the corporate ladder? My. And it makes you a very small person. Obviously not in stature, right? But on the inside, who you are really gets boiled down to just if it's all about you. So what all men need from their fathers is this transcendent cause. Something that is larger than them. If you have your Bible and you want to flip to 2 Corinthians, you don't have to turn there, but it's this snapshot, if you will, where the Apostle Paul is making a pretty profound statement, where he's drawing attention, if you will, at one moment away from himself, like transcendent, something bigger than himself. And then at the next moment, he's saying, this is what we're doing here. 2 Corinthians 4, 5 and 6, it says, For what we proclaim, there you just leave out one word and it makes it difficult. For what we proclaim is not ourselves. In other words, like, we're not trying to make this all about us, right? Like how much we've done, the we is the apostles here, but Jesus Christ our Lord. With ourselves as servants for Christ, for Jesus' sake. For God, who said, let the light shine out of darkness, has shone in our hearts to give the light of knowledge to the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. So in other words, right, we don't want you looking at us and thinking that we're all that. We want you looking at Jesus and thinking that He's all that. So every man needs from his father something that's bigger than them, this transcendent cause. Next is just a masculine vision that goes beyond success to significance. A masculine vision that goes beyond success to significance. This is so important because if you don't have a masculine vision, right, we talked a lot about this, God hardwired into us this masculine OS, right? This masculine operating system. It's uniquely designed for men. Okay? If you don't have a masculine vision that goes beyond just how much money you can make, how intelligent you are, how good of an athlete you are, right? Those are often the things that the world wants to quantify, right? Like, what is it that you can succeed in? How good of a code writer are you? How good of a strategic thinker are you? Right? How fast can you throw a ball? Right? How can you dunk? Whatever it is. But if it doesn't go beyond that to this real masculine vision, right? There's this deficit that's caused. I can't tell you how many, in the course of my ministry life, wives that I've sat down with who've said, man, I just wish my husband was the spiritual leader of our family. Like I'm the spiritual leader of the family, right? Anything to do with the kids and teaching the kids and getting to church and all those things, those are all motivated out of me. And I just wish that Jeff, would you shut that door? I just wish that my husband was the spiritual leader. Well, I think part of this is stemmed out of this no real masculine vision beyond success, right? We think what our primary job is, breadwinner, right? Like, that's it. Let me provide, financially, a home, a place that secure all these things, which is significant. I'm not, man, it is the significant part of what we do as men, but if that's where you end it, you're really lacking in this masculine vision. Next is a code of conduct that builds honorable convictions. This is real simple, right? Like knowing what's right and wrong, principles to live by, right? Like when you left your house, what are the things that you left with going, okay, this is a manly code of conduct, right? And if you didn't leave with a code of conduct, have you begun developing a code of conduct? So we're going to talk a lot about that in the future. As we've said, we're going to spend the first several weeks just deconstructing, and the second semester we'll begin constructing a real practical, applicable vision for biblical manhood for you. So, like, if you haven't done that yet, that'll be a great time. But this code of conduct, like noble, masculine character, it's almost gone in the world today, right? Like, you look around, and for a guy, he's either this macho image, you know, that is so distorted by Hollywood and even self-ego, right? That we think that's what it looks like, that we don't ever really get to a code of conduct because it's all about trying to look like something that Hollywood's created on the outside versus the character, right? Like a real manhood character. These are the things that, you know, I'm just never going to say are okay. I heard this story one time about this guy who was on an airplane. I don't remember if I read it in a book or where it was, but he's on an airplane, and, you know, the drink cart comes by, and, you know, he gives the lady a 10 or whatever, and like, she gives him change back, but it's almost like the same amount that he gave her. And like the guy sitting next to him goes, dude, like you cashed out, right? Like, man, a free drink. And he calls her back and says, hey, like I paid you with a 10, and, you know, it was 5, and you gave me $8 back, right? Like, and so I need to make it right with you. And the guy sitting next to him goes, and you're an idiot, right? Like, that was a free drink, and you made, you know, $5 or whatever it was. And the guy just looks at him and says, no, my character, it's worth more than $5, right? That's almost gone in the world that we live in today, right? It's just this, it's ebbed away. So you need to have this code of conduct. And if you didn't get it from your father, you want to begin to develop it so you can pass it on, you know, to your sons. So that's it on the review part. As we turn our attention to this overly bonded to mother wound, this video is going to sum up these characteristics that we're going to look at in a really funny way. Go ahead, Jeff.
Here's my son.
Mrs. Barone.
Now, I know he overreacted a little to my letter, but I think he'd be an asset to your organization. So could you pick up the phone and
Miss Barone.
Yes?
How did you get in here?
I talked to the men up front, and I told them I had to speak to you about my son, Robert. And they asked me if I was the lucky suit lady, which I guess I am. So I said yes, and they smiled and they let me in.
Bastards.
I wanted to talk to you face to face. That letter, I just scribbled that out to get to as fast as I could.
Mrs. Barone, I'm trying to understand why you're really here.
I'm a mother. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. You have a picture of your dear mother looking at you every day.
That's my wife.
A handsome woman.
Mrs. Barone, I'm beginning to think you really don't want your son to have this job.
Did Robbie tell you to say that? Frank, did my husband call you?
No, I'm just looking at the evidence.
Evidence? What evidence?
Well, you did ruin his lucky suit.
Well, that was an accident.
Or part of the pattern of behavior.
Yes, love, love, love.
wrote this letter, which you said you scribbled out in a hurry.
That's right.
Mrs. Barone, I spent a year teaching handwriting analysis at the academy.
I always got A's in penmanship, so I don't know where you're going with this.
This letter was written with a cool and purposeful hand.
No, I was in a rush.
And then, even though Robert told you the letter embarrassed him, now you arrived in person.
I wanted to fix what I did. I made cookies. Double chocolate chip.
Mrs. Barone, you seem like an intelligent woman.
Thank you. Have a cookie.
Do you really think that a mother interfering to the extent that you have could possibly help a man get a job with the FBI? There's something else going on.
He was supposed to retire. He's a year away from not being a police officer, which means I could stop worrying about him every second of the day. I want him to be safe. Now he wants to go from one dangerous job to another. How long do I have to walk around with a knot in my stomach? Forever? I can't do it anymore. It's too much. But he wants this job. It'll make him happy. And he should be happy. So, yes, he should have this job. Please give him this job.
I can't do that.
No, don't blame him. You can punish me. Put one of those tracking things on my legs so I can't get out of the house. And if you met my husband, you know that's punishment enough.
Mrs. Barone, the reason your son isn't getting this job has nothing to do with you. He's a fine officer. It's just that there are better qualified candidates for the position.
Better qualified than my Robbie?
Yes.
All right, let me tell you something. My Robbie's too good for you.
So that's a funny clip, but you're going to see as we walk through these characteristics in a minute, it really touches almost all of them in a satirical way, right? But like as we look at it and we begin to go, okay, like I see really how unhealthy that is. So as we turn our attention just to the definition of an overly bonded mother wound, is an unhealthy emotional intimacy with mother that causes a son to either be threatened by the influence of women, or later on to overly identify with that influence. So it's either this idea that I'm threatened by you as a woman, or I over-identify with you. So it's this unhealthy emotional intimacy. And it's often just caused by just the absence of a father, as we're gonna look at. It's not something though that if the father wound is a gash caused by a cleaver, this is a cut caused by a razor, right? A scalpel, sharp. It's not blatant, right? It kind of slips in there, if you will, and you know, that wound can be just as dangerous because you can go for a significant amount of time without realizing that you're hemorrhaging, right? Without realizing how deeply wounded you are. When I was a teenager, I picked up bow hunting, and I loved to go bow hunting all the time. And I had this friend, and we were sharpening our broadheads. This was back before they gotten all high tech where they spring out and all these things. They were just, straight broadheads, and we were sharpening them. And he had his on his knee. And he was sharpening it and sharpening and sharpening and sharpening. And then he went, I wonder how sharp this is. And he just did it on his pants leg. And he didn't even pay any attention. And then he looked up and I said, dude, you just cut your leg wide open. And he looked down and here he is, right? It's because it's so sharp. He didn't even realize that he had cut himself, laid it wide open. That's the way I think of this wound, is that it's so sharp that guys suffer for extended amounts of their adult lives, and they don't even realize that they're suffering from it. It's not that they can put their finger on it and go, oh, I realize, like what caused this. So hopefully tonight as we look at this, this will be something that helps you maybe develop an awareness of it. We sometimes like to call this, right, the invisible umbilical cord, right? Like when you were born, you had an umbilical cord attached to your mother, and right, she fed you, gave you everything you needed for life. But after you were born, you just kind of kept that thing attached, right? And mom provided for you and cared for you and like took care of all your needs. And here's what a lot of guys do, man, is if they cut that cord, what happens if they haven't identified this wound, is they just look for somebody else to plug it back into, right? So now I'm not looking to my mother anymore, but I'm looking to my wife, to care for me. It can be one of the results of this wound. But here are the characteristics, and it's this wound is not blatant, it's subtle, right? It's not blatant. It's not in your face, but it's a subtle wound. It's a wound not caused by abuse or neglect or absenteeism, but a wound disguised as love and care. That video, right? And what is this? What's going on? Love, love, love. Right? I'm just trying to love you, baby. I'm just trying to take care of you, baby. This guy's got to be in his 40s, right? And she shows up at his job interview trying to help him get this job with the FBI. Now we go, well, that's blatant, right? Like that's pretty bad. But it happens in different ways, and we'll look at some of those deals. So it's described or disguised often as love and care. Next, it's a wound not of inattention, but over-attention. Over-attention. So one of the distinctions between the roles of male and female is that God uniquely created women to be nurturers. Now I know there's all these personality things and all these, but He uniquely created women to be nurturers. Okay? If the dad isn't there to do his part, right? If he's not stepping up to the plate, like mom feels this, I need to get in there, right? I need to take over. I need to take control. So it's often a wound that's caused by over-attention. Mom's giving you too much attention. It can look like love, but it feels like control. Look like love, hey, for you to show up and at the job interview and you to say, hey, like I don't actually want my son to get this job because I'm caring for him. Like I don't want him to get hurt. Really, she's just trying to control, right? She's just trying to control the outcomes. Next, it's so powerful that it can shape or warp the masculine psyche. It can shape or warp the masculine psyche. So as we kind of went through those, let me give you a couple of examples that may bring this to home for you. It's Christmas, Thanksgiving, whatever it is, right? And you're always going to mom's house, right? Because that's where you always did Christmas, right? There's no negotiation now that you're two families, right? It's no conversation. It's, hey, where does Christmas happen? What happens at mom's house? Because if I don't show up to mom's house, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be happy. That's just a practical deal. So my oldest daughter got married 3 years ago, we have our first grandbaby from them, and they live in California. This year, for Thanksgiving, we're going to California instead of my mom's house. You know what? My mom, she is not happy. Right? She's just not. She's a pretty controlling person. But like, God was so gracious to me over time, and I'll tell you a few more instances where this fleshed out, that he said to me, basically, are you going to lead and love your wife, or are you going to let your mom? Because that's what it felt like. It felt like my mother was trying to lead my family from the outside. And I just had to say, okay. And I had to have some hard conversations. Hard conversations. I can remember when our first daughter was 3, maybe 4 years old, and she had done something that our house, we had a few set of rules. If then. If you did this, then this happened. And this one was a spanking. You're going to get a spanking. So we were at my mom's visiting, and she did this, so I went into the kitchen to get a spanking spoon. You know, never used as a spanking spoon by my mother. She's a dish rag. But anyway, I go in there, and my mom says, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm going to get this spoon. I'm going to take Casey in the back, and I'm going to give her a spanking. And she says, not in my house, you're not. And I said, okay, Mom, I just want to be clear with you. If I can't parent my daughter the way that I believe God has called me to parent her, I can't bring her here. Whoa, 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 right? And she just completely backed the truck up right then, right? Like, hey, because she just wanted to control. She wants relationship like all people do, but she wants to control it. That's this deal. My dad was absent. She ran the show. He was in the military, right? He just came home and gave the orders. But day in, day out, she was in charge. She made all the decisions. And she was good at it, honestly. I mean, she ran a greatly ordered house. Some other things weren't so great. Okay, so here's a deal. You're in college, right? And you come home on a college break, and your car needs work. And now Mom is talking to you about your car, and the next thing you know, Mom's calling the mechanic to talk to about your car. Working out all the details, working out all the, ins and outs of what needs to happen, because she just can't let you be stranded out there. Right? Like, she's got to make sure that you're taken care of. So I think I've said this before, when our kids turn 12, they get 2 things. A laundry basket and an alarm clock. Because I'm not waking you up anymore, and I'm not doing your laundry anymore. That's been so helpful for my boys. Now, children are different, right? Like, some of them will let it until they go, hey, man, can we go on Saturday too? Dude, no way you can go, because that's going to take like 3 or 4 hours worth of wash, right? But like, you've got to help your wives, and I do mean help. I don't mean order, take charge, step in. You've got to help them see that as mothers, especially toward their sons, there becomes a time where they need to be backing off. And you need to be really stepping up. Like, you need to be the one that they're going, okay, hey, I got this. Like, Dad is present. He is active. Paying their own way. Man, it is devastating, guys, for us to keep shelling out the cha-ching for our kids. It's devastating to them. And I know, right, like, the economy is tougher, it's more difficult, but I have 2 girls right now in college, and 1 son in the military and 1 son at home. The other one's married. But those 2 girls in the college, they both work 30, 35 hours a week sometimes, because they pay their own living expenses. That's the deal we were able to make. And you've got to figure out to make your deal, right? We'll pay for your school as long as we can. You keep going in your education, you want a master's, a PhD, that's probably going to be on you. But we'll go as far as we can down the road. But you've got to pay for your living. That's hugely important for sons. because this is my personal experience. My sons wanted to stay at the tit longer than my girls, right? Like they wanted like mom to take care of them longer. And I had to say, right? My son is just home from maneuvers today, and my wife texted me before we were coming up here, and she said, hey, I'm going to dinner with Josh. And I texted her and said, make him pay. Right? Like, he's 23 years old. He wants to go to dinner with his mom. Dude, let him pay. Like, there's a good part of that as a man. I heard this story from Tim, who was one time counseling with a lady, and she was talking about how her husband had such a strenuous job that he was never getting anything done around the house. So like the yard was always grown up, but her husband works all these long hours. And Tim says, well, don't you have a 12 or 13-year-old son? And she says, yeah, but he's so small. And he said, he looked at her and said, I hope to God he's never heard you say that. Right? Like he needs to hear, hey, you can do it. Like whatever you need to do, like figure out how to do it. Like I was out there with my boys, as soon as they could start the lawnmower, that's all yours, brother. As soon as you can get that baby pulled. And I remember my wife going, you think that's safe? And I said, yeah, look, I've taught them, I've talked to them, like I think it's safe as it is with boys. And they killed a lot of stuff in the yard that running over with. But right, like they need to know that they can do it, that they can accomplish hard things. Like, I talk a lot to guys in the work environment right now who are saying that the younger generation coming up in the work world, they just don't have any drive, right? They want to do right here so they can spend all their time playing. So I don't really want to put in an extraordinary amount of effort right on my job because I'm really wanting to just play. And I think personally that this is what we do in the world. It's this overcorrection. You know, my father's generation, my generation, if you weren't working 60 hours a week, you weren't working, right? If you weren't giving all your time, you weren't doing any, like hard work was how you, I think this is an overcorrection of that. You know, so we need to get it back to the middle, a real masculine vision where it's like, I see myself as the spiritual leader of my family. It's a masculine vision. I believe one day I'm going to stand in front of Jesus and he's going to say, hey, Chuck, how'd you do with Tina and these 5 kids? Masculine vision. So it can warp your psyche. Like it can really change you for who you are for a lifetime. So what are the causes of this mother wound? Well, it begins, obviously, with this absent father or distant, absent men in general. Remember, absent doesn't just mean absent in presence, but it means absence, like absence in distance, rather, but it means absence in presence. A father that's just not there, not engaged, has no real influence and input on the family. And it's inflicted by, and we need to hear these right, because if you don't hear them right, they're abrasive and almost abusive. But you have to put them in the right context. They're inflicted by ignorant moms. This is this first one. And an ignorant mom is just a mother that is unaware of her power, basically. She doesn't really recognize the influence that she has, right? So, nor does she really recognize the needs that boys have, specifically. Here's a book that I would recommend to all you fathers with sons, but this book was especially influential in Tina's life. Like, I gave it to her to read it, and she goes, oh, I get it. And it's Wild at Heart by Eldridge, John Eldridge. And it's a great, just guy's book, right? This talks about how uniquely God created man and this real wild at heart. But if a mother doesn't understand that, she spends a significant time of her in her parenting, always trying to nurture, to care, to keep you safe, right? Like, don't do that. That's dangerous, right? You don't want to get hurt. And I'm not saying being crazy, but men are built to do dangerous things. It's just dangerous things for Jesus. It's dangerous things that we can say, hey, yeah, no one thought that I could do that, but I did it. Nobody had a clue that that could be accomplished, but I was able to accomplish that. It's how God has wired us. And an ignorant mom can keep you from that. She can overprotect. Next, it's inflicted by a needy or a hurting mom. A needy or a hurting mom. So this is maybe a mom who, and this is fairly common, a mom who had a dream. Right? She had the fairy tale dream of what marriage was going to look like, right? A knight in shining armor. Hey, we're going to sit down and we're going to watch a lot of romantic comedies together, and like we're going to spend long hours reading books together, and like all these romantic notions. And maybe it didn't work out exactly how she thought that it was going to. So she's hurt, right? The knight in shining armor didn't show up, right? Maybe he's an overworker. Maybe he's just insensitive, right? But he didn't show up, so she turns her attention to her sons. And she says, hey, like, internally I know that this need is supposed to be being met by a man. So I'm going to look to you as my son to meet that need. I'm going to draw my emotional support and comfort from you. And do you think that's dangerous for a boy? Yeah, this is very dangerous, right? Because what happens is, we're going to look at it in a minute, there's two sides of this thing. He either becomes real domineering, right? Like, I'm not going to let a woman ever control me, give me anything. Or he becomes feminine, where he so relates to a woman that he has a hard time relating to men. Controlling moms is the next one. You know, this is just a mom who, you know, one, she's a mom. Two, she's type A, right? Like, hey, I want everything how I want it, right? Like, and if it's not how I want it, nobody is going to be happy. So this was my mother. She was so controlling that when she had this huge, like, will date me a little bit, but she had this huge brass table that my father brought back from, I don't know, Vietnam or Thailand or somewhere when he was in the military. And it was covered in magazines. This is back before everything was electronic, right? And all these magazines all over it. You couldn't touch those magazines. They were only there aesthetically. Like, you couldn't pick one up and read it. It had to be right there. When she vacuumed the living room floor, you weren't allowed to walk from here to there. You had to go to the corners of the room because you'd get footprints on the carpet. When you took a shower, you better not leave a drop of water in the shower. So you had to get the towel and like dry it all out, and like, man, She kept an orderly house, man. Like, I was never ashamed or afraid to bring my friends over because my house was always perfect. Now, I was afraid to bring them over because my mom would kill them if they messed anything up. But, right, this controlling mom, she uses her influence to get what she wants. Next, the fill-in-the-gap mom. Fill-in-the-gap mom. She's basically trying to stand in the gap. She's trying to stand in the gap, and she over exceeds the boundaries here, right? She's not willing to let her son fail because her father is out of the picture. So she's always there making sure he succeeds. Get a call from the school. Johnny's not doing good in school. He's not turning in his assignments. Mom, like these teachers, they're not doing their job, right? Like because my Johnny, he's perfect, right? So she's always taking Johnny's side on every issue because Johnny can do no wrong. Johnny gets a ticket. Oh, poor Johnny, you got a ticket? Man, like, let me pay it for you. Let's see if we can get it erased. Let's take care of it. This fill in the gap mom, she really weakens the son. All these things, right? The love and the care, the attention, all of them feel like a care package. Remember, were you ever anywhere or in school or whatever and you get a care package, right? But they're actually like a pipe bomb to the man's psyche. Right? It's not a care package. It blows up on you. It looks good, it feels good, but it's dangerous, to us as men. Prentice Tipton, he did this study, and this is a little bit dated, 1987, but basically he takes this look at society, and he's specifically narrowed in on the African American culture. But as you see the world that we live in today, like you'll recognize that this is true for everybody. Okay, so it says that when a mother leads the family because the father fails to lead, either by being absent themselves from the home or by taking a passive role, boys are deprived of the most important natural model of manliness. Remember we said early on that the dad recognizes that he's not perfect, but he's good enough to be irreplaceable, right? So they're deprived of the most natural model of manliness. Growing up mainly under the supervision of women, many experience insecurity over their identity as men. They don't have a clear identity. They don't know what it means to be uniquely masculine. Well, why not? Because they were raised by their mother, basically, right? Like she was the one who did everything. So how do women pay the bills? How do women make decisions? That's all you know, right? Very feeling oriented often. So one of the tendencies, it says, is for boys growing up under such circumstances is to rebel against women who are in authority over them and become sociological disruptive. They're disruptive in the culture that we live in. They're irresponsible in family and in work commitments. You work with any guys that are irresponsible in their family commitments, right? In their work commitments, right? Like, it's just blatant across the board. That over-exert them, over-assertive about their manly powers, right? In other words, they're, for lack of a better term, right, macho, egosential, like that's what they think it is. They're over-assertive with it, especially in sexual areas, or leading lives characterized by violence and crime and alcoholism and other addictions. Okay, so that's one side of it. Rebel, over, violent, hostile. The other is the tendency for young men is to identify with the adult woman who are in authority in their lives and to learn to behave or react in ways that are more appropriate to a woman than to men. To the extent that a young males take their opinion, take their position, right? This idea of who I am, and they don't learn the discipline and the responsibility and the character involved in being a man. Here again, because they only know what it looks like to have a woman leader. So there's two wrong responses here to the wound, right? There's that sons become overly dominant and hostile in regards to women. And this is where this showed up in my life. So when I got married, well, one, I wasn't a believer, but I became a believer fairly quickly. But even after I became a believer, I was very open to growing. Like, I wanted to grow. Like, if you said something to me about my finances, I was open to listen to you. If you said something to me about my marriage, I was open to listen to you. From all venues but my wife. I couldn't put my finger on it for the longest time, but I just could not stand to take criticism from her. Like, it just drove me up the wall. Like, the dog that gets the hair up on the back of his neck, like, bristled. Like, I didn't want to hear it from her, like anybody else. And this is what I was able to come back to, is that, man, that was my mom. She was very controlling, and I was not going to let Tina control me. I wasn't going to let her be the leader of my family. So anytime she wanted to give input, shut that baby down, right? Because I can make a decision, right? I don't need you to help me. And it was really hard, as you can imagine, right? Really difficult on our marriage. It was really difficult on me because I didn't always make the best decisions. And often, like, she had very godly, good input, and I wasn't listening to it. So we can become dominant. So we see this just very early on in Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3, right, is where the fall has occurred. And the curse is pronounced. Verse 16, it says, this is God talking to the woman, and he says, and surely I will multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth a child. And then he says, and your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. Okay? What does that mean? And your desire shall be for your husband. So, all you guys, you wish that it was like sexual desire, right? Like, oh yeah, man, my wife, she is going to want me. But if you've been married more than about 4 or 5 years, you recognize that's not the case, right? Like, it's not just sexual desire. No, part of the curse is now that the woman wants control, right? She desires to be in control, right? And I think, like, if you looked at it and how the curse happened, I think it's because the man was passive. Right? Like he's standing right there. I didn't step in. I didn't say no. I just let it happen. Right? So now she desires. She says, hey, like I've got to self-protect, basically. Right? Like I've got a desire to be in control. And he will rule over you. This isn't the word here for loving leader. Right? This is the word like for dominate. Right? Like overbearing. Right? That he will rule over you. It's part of the curse. Like a man's natural tendency can be, right? That I'm going to dominate. Right? That's this response, or this wrong response, if you will, to this overly bonded to mother wound. Can be domination. The second one is that a son becomes overly passive or feminized in regards to women. Overly passive or feminized. If you've never read this story, like it just really cracks me up. In 1 Kings here. So this is a story about the ruler of Israel, and his name is Naboth, or this king rather, and he's married. But anyway, let me just read some of it. It says, now Jabath, the Jezreelite, had a vineyard in Jeriel beside the palace of, Ahab is the king. Ahab, the king of Samaria. And Ahab said to Naboth, right? So you get the picture. The king has a palace next to this guy who has a vineyard, and he says, hey, give me your vineyard, and that I may have it for a vegetable garden, because it is near my house. He's trying to use his position, his influence, like, hey, that's easy, convenient for me. Like, give me what I want. I want the vegetable garden because it's near my house. And I'll give you a better vineyard for it. Or if it seems good to you, I'll give you its value in money. But Naboth said to Ahab, the Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance of my fathers. So in my quiet time lately, I've been reading through Joshua, and I've just read all of the boring parts of how the inheritance happens, right? Like, okay, this family gets this family gets that. So that's what's happening right here, right? He's saying, hey, God gave me this land, like this is my inheritance. He tells me where to live. No way I'm giving it to you. Like, this is, God gave this to me. And then watch his response is just hilarious almost. And Ahab went to his house vexing. You can almost hear the tears rolling. Sullen because of what Naboth the Jezreelite had said to him. I will not give you the inheritance of my father. And he laid down on his bed and turned his face and would not eat food. Has your kids ever done this? Right? Like when you told them no to something, they just went to bed pouting, right? Like crying, sucking their thumb. Like you get this picture that Ahab is sitting there curled up in the fetal position, sucking his thumb. But, wife to the rescue. But Jezebel, his wife, came in to him and said, why is your spirit so vexed that you will eat no food? And he said to her, because I spoke to Naboth the Jezreelite, and I said to him, give me the garden, the vineyard, for money, if it pleases you, and I will give you another vineyard for it. And he answered me, I will not give you my vineyard. And she says, where are your balls? Right? She says, are you not like the king of Israel? Right? Like, are you a man? Are you not the king? Arise and eat bread, and let your heart be cheerful. If you underline in your Bible, you should underline this, man, I will give it to you. Right? She stepped in. She says, hey, honey, don't worry. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to get you what you want. I'm going to get you the vineyard of your dreams. And if you don't know the rest of the story, she does just that, man. She sets this guy up. He gets basically falsely accused for blaspheming. They take him out and they stone him. Honey, here you go. Here it is. But the next thing you know, Elijah shows up and says, hey, because you did this, right? Like God's going to rip the kingdom from you. But then, how would you like this written on your tombstone? This is Ahab's parting gift here. There was none who sold himself to do what was evil in the sight of the Lord like Ahab, who Jezebel, his wife, enticed. Man, isn't that terrible? Right? Like, hey, here it is. I was so passive that this is what I'm known for. I'm known for that my wife wore the pants in the family, and when she made this decision based on emotion, right? She saw me feeling emotion. She came in emotionally. She wanted to fix the emotions. And basically now we've lost everything. God uniquely created us different, man. And if you have this father wound, the chances are that you might also have the overly bonded to mother wound, because they go hand in hand if it's the absent father wound, right? That you were more closely related to your mother, that she had a spot in your life that's wasn't healthy for you, and you've picked up, if you will, bad habits in your manhood, right? You picked up bad habits. And they're probably subtle. I'll tell you one that's ridiculous to me that I had picked up. So this is back when you actually had telephones at home. And the telephones had cords and all these things, and they rang. I would never answer the phone at my house. I just wouldn't. Like, it could ring a million times. I didn't care. Like, I was not, used to drive Tina crazy. Now, I didn't know it drove her crazy. Until a couple of times, you know, that she said, hey, it's your family. They want, if I wanted to talk to my family, I would have called them, right? Like, I didn't answer the phone because I didn't want to answer the phone. I didn't want to talk to anybody. And that's embarrassing, honestly. Like, I'm thankful to Jesus for his grace toward me, but that I would be so passive like that, right? That I would be so affected by something as well and not even realize it. Like, it's one of now my wife's favorite, like, stories of how I've grown, right? Like, she likes to say, hey, yeah, I remember when, like, you wouldn't answer the same thing with the door. Doorbell rang, you can stay there forever. I'm not coming to the door. I'm not answering the door. Like, man, this wound we're going to look at next week of just how now do you address it. But let's spend a few minutes, it's till 8 o'clock, so you got 25 minutes, just discussing it in our small group.